Mr. Tate plays knight takes on f5 because the pawn cannot take here because the queen is under attack, and the queen cannot take here because the queen's going to take it. The pawn is pinned to the king. What is up, you chess brainiacs? Welcome back to another video on the Full Strive YouTube channel. Today we're going to be reviewing two insane Andrew Tate chess games, and I gotta say, the checkmate in the second game is actually crazy, and I really think you should stick around to watch and see exactly what happened with that one. But for this first game, it is also an insane finish, and you are not going to believe the brilliant move that Mr. Tate plays towards the end of this game. So with that being said, let's get right into the game. Mr. Tate opens this game up with d4, and this is actually the worst move on the board. You never ever want to push your queen's pawn forward because it is absolutely trash. I am joking. There are a lot of good openings with d4. I am clearly an e4 player, and if you play d4, all love, all jokes aside. I just don't like seeing d4 personally. Mr. Tate's opponent now responds with the move d5. Very principled. This is a queen's pawn opening, but Mr. Tate now responds with the move c4. And this right here is the queen's gambit. The main line for the queen's gambit. Now, Mr. Tate's opponent were to take this pawn, this would be considered the queen's gambit accepted, and there is only one main move you should play here every single time. You can play e3 sometimes, but the best move on the board here is to push this pawn forward and attack this pawn right here. Whereas if Mr. Tate's opponent were to play a move like this would be considered the queen's gambit declined. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about this, and this was actually played in the game here. And Mr. Tate now plays bishop f4, bringing the bishop out to attack some squares, and his opponent responds with the move c6, trying to defend everything, trying to defend and create a big center as best as he can, but he also simultaneously weakens his dark squares. So keep that in mind as we progress in this game. And Mr. Tate now responds with a very, very insane move, which I think is very diabolical. e4, striking, pushing the pawn forward and actually sacking a pawn low-key. Now, he will probably get this pawn back if it does get taken here, but he's trying to create a break of sorts and when I say break, I mean like if he were to take here, there would just be like this pawn would be weakened. There'd be opportunities to maybe get the queen up here. Maybe you could move the knight. Actually, you can't move this knight here. Maybe you can move the knight here as well. Like there's just so many ways you can go about this, and Mr. Tate's trying to get a little crafty out of the opening here. So after this move, we do see d takes e4, which is actually what was played in the game. And so Mr. Tate now responds with the move knight c3, which is what we just walked through. And now his opponent plays f5, striking, while also defending this pawn right here, which is, honestly, chess.com doesn't give it the best move, but I still think it's a good move to defend that pawn. A better move would apparently been to play knight f6. So after we see this move, f5, we see g4, which is an otherworldly move here, because, like, since when are you going to push your g-pawn all the way up here to try and attack here? Like, I don't know about you, but if you play chess, like, that just looks weird to me. After this move is played, we see bishop d6. And now this is an annoying move because now Mr. Tate will have to trade the bishops off the board. And now this queen is now sniping coming down here, and the queen is in the game, and eventually his opponent's going to get the knight in the game. The knight could potentially go here eventually and maybe swing around, and there's just so many opportunities for his opponent to create threats and basically all sorts of different ways to keep Mr. Tate thinking and on his heels. So after this move is played, we see g takes f5, followed by e takes f5, and then queen h5 check. And I personally hate this move because I preach this all the time to my beginners. If you are making a move with your queen in the beginning of the game, 9 times out of 10 is a bad move. And the reason why this is a bad move is because of the move pawn to g6. And the reason why this is so bad is because Black now wins a tempo, and when you win a tempo, that essentially means that you push a piece forward, as in like you're getting a piece into the game more or less. So in this case, the pawn pushed and created a 4-pawn chain right here. And in the process of that happening, you now have to slide your queen either all the way back, all the way here, and you're basically just wasting a move. And as Eva Bar says here, it's plus 1.3 now for Black. And so Mr. Tate is on the ropes early. And also this pawn is hanging currently. So he technically has to go all the way back here, which is what he does. He slides the queen all the way back to d1. And after the queen slides back to d1, we see the move knight f6. Good job by his opponent developing the knight to try and get some more pressure into the position. And after this move is played, we see knight knight ge2, which honestly, I like that move personally. Like, I get it, you're trying to maybe swing the knight over here eventually. Perhaps, like, you do block your bishop in here eventually. Maybe you could slide your queen up eventually here too. Or actually, maybe you slide your queen up here so make sure you defend this pawn right here. And then maybe castle after that. But Mr. Tate vouches for the move, knight to e2. So after this move is played, we see castles and then rook g1. And this is actually a really interesting move to me because now you are pinning this pawn to the king, and this pawn's a little bit more weakened now. So after we see this, we see queen takes on h2. So that was actually a bad move because it straight up hung a pawn, and Mr. Tate is quite literally on the ropes now as it stands. He is down 2 pieces of material now. He was down just 1 because of the queen's gambit and him sacking a pawn on that e4 square. But there's just so much more that is going to be coming into play here shortly. So stay tuned. This game is not over yet. So after queen takes on h2, we see rook g3, and this game is done, said, match. It is plus 4.4 on the eval bar for black, and there's absolutely no way Mr. Tate can come back in this spot, right? So after this move, we see knight g4. Jumping the knight in, creating a checkmating threat here. Actually, this is not a checkmating threat. You can always slide the king here, but Mr. Tate needs to do something about this pawn because this pawn will fall if he does not do something about it fast. So he slides rook down to rook rook g2, attacking the queen. So now the queen has to move, and so the queen now slides up to h4. And after queen h4, we see knight g3, attacking this pawn, and creating some threats. So after this move, we see knight d7, good move by his opponent, honestly, in my opinion, because he gets the knight into the game, and eventually he can probably get the knight here. Get the knight here, perhaps, and then maybe here, and then try and just trade material off the board. Like, black's main goal right now is to try and get as much material off the board as he possibly can. So after this move, we see queen e2, followed by knight b6. And he actually goes the other way, which is kind of interesting. So now the knight is threatening this pawn. It is still covered by the queen and the bishop, so there's no threats there currently. But it's just another thing that Mr. Tate's going to have to keep in mind throughout this game. So after this, we see castle's queenside, followed by bishop e6. And now the pressure is coming. Black has so much tempo coming towards the white position, and there's only so much more that Mr. Tate can do before the position is going to be completely and utterly lost, and checkmate will be imminent in a few moments. But we see d5, and after d5, we could potentially see a c takes d5, which would honestly probably win material here. Yes, it would, because after takes. Actually, no, it wouldn't win material. Just kidding. But we do see c takes d5, and the pawn's going to take back on c5, or d5. And the bishop can't take here because of what we just looked at, so the bishop has to slide back, which is what happens in the game. And after this, we see f3, followed by e takes f3. And that's honestly a good move, because now you're forking everything, and the position is just completely and utterly lost. Like, what are you supposed to do here as Mr. Tate? Like, there's literally nothing you could do, right? The queen's forked, and the queen and the rook are both forked. And like, what are you supposed to do now? Because if you ever move the queen, like say you gotta move the queen here, right? This is gonna fall, which is the defender of this knight. So eventually this knight could fall, and there's just so much devastating stuff happening right here. But wait. After this move, we see queen takes on f3, because the pawn was actually hanging. And after this, we see knight e5, followed by queen f2, sliding the queen down. And after queen f2, we see queen g5 check. King slides over to b1. And then we see rook fd8. And this move right here blunders the game completely and utterly in one single move. And if you want to pause the video and try and find the move, be my guest. But Mr. Tate plays knight takes on f5, because the pawn cannot take here because the queen is under attack, and the queen cannot take here because the queen's going to take it. The pawn is pinned to the king. Brilliancy from Mr. Tate. Exquisite play. Because let's say the queen does slide back like here. There's nothing you could do because the knight's going to come over here and check, and it's going to be a discovered attack on the queen. And the queen is just quite literally trapped because the queen cannot go here because the knight's going to take. The queen can't go here because the knight will take. Queen can't go here because of the same thing. Yeah, if the queen goes here, bishop b2, and the queen can't go here because of rook g3, and the queen is literally trapped. There's nothing black can do in this position to rescue his queen, with perfect play from Mr. Tate. So in this position, black just takes the knight. He goes out with a bang. Who needs it? Who needs the knight? Sorry, excuse me. Who needs the queen? Like, might as well just sack the queen. Let's get the queen off the board here. So after the queen takes, the queen's obviously going to take back, and now Mr. Tate is up a clean 5 pieces of material as it stands. So after this move, we see the knight c4, followed by bishop takes on c4, which is very principal for Mr. Tate. Get material off the board. You are now winning. Try and get as much material off the board as you possibly can. That's going to take back on c4. Then we see rook f1, followed by rook f8. And this move is forced because, and honestly, they probably could have slid the rook over down to d2, but you need to do something to defend this bishop because there is now a battery coming down this file. And after this move, we see queen d7, followed by knight e3, which is now forking the rooks, mind you. But Mr. Tate Simon, where he just calmly slides the rook over to f2. The knight's going to take the rook on f1, rook's going to take back on f1. And after this move, we see b6, followed by knight e4, a5, knight f6 check, king g7, knight e4, and then the noob, his name is Noob on the screen for you, but the noob, Mr. Tate's opponent, plays rook a8, attacking the queen. And Mr. Tate takes the rook on f7, delivering check, and in this position, his opponent resigned. Because if the rook takes, you're going to lose a rook here, and you're just up a queen and a knight against a rook, which is just completely and utterly losing, especially against anyone above 900 elo. Now, if you were below 900 elo, you probably would have a chance to maybe get a stalemate, but chances are very minimum. But Mr. Tate's opponent does the honorable thing and does resign in this position. And Mr. Tate wins a very clean game here in this one. But that is just the first game. This next game is going to have you on the edge of your seat throughout. So don't go anywhere. Let's get right into that second game. All right, so for this second game, we have Mr. Tate once again playing with the white pieces, and his opponent is a little bit lower elo. I found this game on a chess app where I can look up famous celebrities' games, and his rating was right around 1400 elo, so I just went ahead and put him as 1400 elo, and Mr. Tate is going to be rocking the 1500 elo, which is right around where he is at the time of this game happening. So Mr. Tate opens up with a very similar move, which is d4. Once again, the worst move on the board, blah, blah, blah. I don't care what you say. I hate d4. But if you play d4, I still love you. I think you're cool. Join my Discord. I still like you. You should still join. Anyways, this move is followed up by d5, and Mr. Tate plays the move c4. And he is, like I said in the previous game, notorious for playing the Queen's Gambit. Once again, this is the Queen's Gambit main line. Once again, if Mr. Tate's opponent were to take this pawn, he would push this pawn up, attacking this pawn, and if the pawn were to push here, you could play a4, and usually your opponent would follow up with c6. You could probably now take this pawn, the pawn would take back, and you just have so much opportunity here, because now the knight's going to come here, you're going to be attacking here, and if let's say you do this, and then pawn does push here, you can actually sack this knight, because if the pawn takes back, you're going to lose a rook. And there's just so many things that can happen in this spot where you can quite literally be put on the ropes as black. So personally, if I'm ever playing d4, which is probably never, but if you play d4, if you see d4 followed by c4 after you play d5, I highly recommend you don't play the accepted, because there's so many different tricky lines. Like, yes, it's mainline theory, yes, you can get out of it, but there's a lot of different stuff that comes into play. But Mr. Tate's opponent does play the move c6, which is actually the Slav defense. Now, in the previous game, we saw pawn to e6, but instead, this time we see the pawn to c6. And this is going to get very tricky very, very fast. So after this, we see a similar move in the previous game, which is bishop f4, getting the bishop into the game to attack this diagonal here. Mr. Tate's opponent now responds with the move knight f6, followed by knight f3, played by white, knight h5. And this move just looks absolutely diabolical. But why? 9 times out of 10, out of the opening in particular, you typically do not want to move a piece twice, especially a knight or a bishop, especially not your queen. Because this low-key loses a tempo, which is what we talked about in the previous game. Because Mr. Tate, literally all he has to do now is probably maybe slide the bishop down here. He can maybe move the bishop here. The top engine move is actually move the bishop up here. But Mr. Tate does vouch for moving the bishop down to g3. And after we slide the bishop down to g3, the knight's going to take here, and the pawn is going to take. And now this open file is now wide open for the taking. And there's going to be long-term threats coming down this file, so stay tuned and find out what exactly happens on this file. After this move, we see e6, followed by e3. Very principled stuff. Now the bishop is defending this pawn here. And after this move, we see d takes on c4, followed by bishop takes back on c4. And then we see the move b5, attacking the bishop. So Mr. Tate can go one of two ways. He You could slide the bishop back down here and maybe try and get the bishop up here eventually and try and like x-ray this. However, this move could be coming here eventually. He could also slide the bishop down here maybe, perhaps, and then maybe move the knight up here maybe. But there's just so many different ways he can go about this. Yes, this pushes a pawn forward, but low-key it kind of overextends. And when you overextend a pawn, it essentially means that you're pushing a pawn forward that should not be pushed this early in the game. So after this move, we see bishop d3, which is what Mr. Tate vouched for. And then we see a really weird move. Perhaps, maybe you could have moved the bishop down here. Maybe you could have developed the knight here, maybe? But instead we see the move h6, which low-key doesn't do anything. Like, perhaps his opponent was thinking like, oh, I just need to play a waiting move, like I'll be fine. Like, just play something to try and salvage the position and just kind of slowly ease my way into putting a little bit more pressure on Mr. Tate. But Mr. Tate now responds with pushing the pawn forward to g4. And a lot of chess players know this, but when you have double pawns in this spot, typically you're going to want to try and get as much material off the board as you can, or excuse me, you're going to want to try and get these pawns undoubled as quickly as you possibly can. And in this case, with the pawn being on the g file, Mr. Tate's plan is to try and push this pawn forward, because if this pawn were to hypothetically take this pawn, Mr. Tate would just collect the rook and it would just be a free piece. So that is his plan as it currently stands. So after this move, we see bishop e7, which is a good move. This is the second top engine move, because now when the pawn pushes, you can now take, and then take. So you would win material here if white were to push this pawn forward. But Mr. Tate responds with knight bd2, and black responds now with bishop b7, and then we see knight e4, and now the pressure is mounting for white against the black position. After this move, we see knight d7, developing the knight, getting a piece into the game. I like that move personally from black. And Mr. Tate responds with g5. The plan is in order, because after the knight got here, now this pawn is completely covered. Because now, if the bishop takes, the knight's going to take back. If the pawn takes, you're still going to lose this rook like we just talked about. And if the queen takes, you're just going to lose a queen. And you're going to lose a lot of material. So there's threats coming here, and Mr. Tate's opponent needs to do something about this, and something about this fast. We now see the move h5, pushing the pawn forward. And that is an inaccuracy because of the move g6. Completely and utterly pressing the pawn forward to suffocate the black position as best as you possibly can. And this is actually the best move on the board, because if the pawn were to take here, let's say the pawn takes here, a move like queen b3, and this pawn is going to be on the ropes, and there's quite literally nothing you can do. If you move the queen down to check here, like, you could just slide your king up, and you're just golden. You're completely and utterly golden, and this pawn's gonna fall. There's nothing you can do to defend this pawn. But instead, black plays the move f6, pushing the pawn forward, and that is a slight inaccuracy because f5 would have been a little bit better, because now you would have had to you would have created the threat on the knight and forced the knight to have to move somewhere else, because like there's nothing stopping this pawn from taking this knight, so you would have had to move the knight somewhere else, right? So after this, we see queen b3, same plan in order. This pawn is going to fall because there's nothing that can protect it. The king cannot go here because the pawn is covering, and Mr. Tate has his opponent on the ropes on move 15. So after this move is played, we see queen a5 check, which is actually exactly what I just talked about. Now, yes, the king can slide here, but you could also maybe move the knight here to block. Yes, that's a little bit scary because then the bishop can come in, but if the bishop were to come in here, you could just take here with check. You could literally just take here with check, and the bishop would have to come back eventually, and there's just so much chaos that will be ensuing in the black position if that were to happen. But Mr. Tate does find the best move on the board, which is sliding the king up to king e2. And then after this, we see e5, pushing the pawn forward, and this right here loses the game on the spot. And if you want to try and find the winning move, go ahead and pause that video, try and figure out if you would like to. But the winning move here is queen f7. Or maybe taking the pawn first instead? I thought for sure he was going to go here, but the pawn takes. And then we see takes, and then queen f7 check. Because Mr. Tate got material off the board. Brilliancy. Absolute brilliancy from Mr. Tate. Exquisite play. Getting more pieces off the board, less stuff he has to think about. Very, very solid stuff here for Mr. Andrew Tate. So after the queen comes down here to check the king, we see king d8. And after this, we see rook h d1. there is now a discovered attack threat on the king. And let's say black played something like queen b4 maybe. You could play a3. Yes, the queen can take here with check. But apparently the winning move here is bishop c2, check on the king, discovered attack here. And there's quite literally nothing, absolutely nothing black can do to stop checkmate from brewing. Eventually he's gonna have to sack the queen, and there's just so much stuff that you're gonna have to think about here. But instead of playing this move, we see rook e8, which is actually the best move on the board. So kudos to black for finding the best move. And then we see knight c5, bringing the knight in, creating more pressure. This bishop is now under fire. The knight's gonna come here and create a check eventually too. See king c7. Now we see knight e6 check. The king now tries to hide over here with b6. And then we see a4, striking and creating as much pressure as the white position possibly can to try and suffocate that king, perhaps eventually win the queen, and perhaps eventually create checkmate. So after this move, we see queen b4, and this move is losing because of the move a5. And there is only one move you can make that saves a position and prevents checkmate in one move. If the king were to go here, there would be a checkmate in one move. So you would have to sack the queen here because the rook would take and then the king would take, and checkmate would be bringing a couple of moves. Maybe not forced, you would have to sack material to salvage the position, but instead of sacking the queen, black plays a6, and if you would like to pause the video and try to find the mate in one, be my guest. But in this position, Mr. Tate plays the winning checkmating move, which is knight to c7, checkmate. A beautiful checkmate. The king is under fire from the knight. The king cannot go here because the pawn is covering. The king cannot take this pawn because the rook is covering. And Mr. Tate wins an exquisite chess game in 25 moves. Brilliancy from Mr. Tate. There's so much controversy behind his name, but at the end of the day, his father was a stellar chess master. And you can clearly see that Mr. Tate does in fact have some of those qualities in his chess gameplay. So guys, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and comment and tell me your thoughts. I would love to hear from you. And if you enjoy chess content, I highly recommend you subscribe. I upload these videos every single day, and I think you will find these videos very insightful, very interesting, and very funny on a lot of them. So if you think that would be something you would enjoy, I highly recommend you click that subscribe button. And also, we have a Discord server where we host chess tournaments, daily checkmates, which is essentially puzzles but checkmates, because checkmates are more fun, and a bunch of other awesome stuff that I truly, truly believe you will enjoy with every fiber of your being. And if that sounds like something you would enjoy, there's a link in the description down below, and all you gotta do is click that, hop in, and join the community of like-minded chess individuals who are trying to get better at the game we all love every single day. And also guys, if you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you check out this video. This video was very fun to make, and I think you'll find it very interesting and very, very enjoyable to watch. So for the final time, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Peace.